Good afternoon, Robert Scribbler. It is July 30th, 2018. Thank you for joining me for another climate change and clean energy video blog. Now, for this segment, I am going to talk about a little bit more about the sources of global carbon emissions and some things that you can do as an individual to help deal with climate crisis. But before I do, I'd like to just call your attention to another YouTube channel. It's called Global Weirding with Katharine Hayhoe. And Katharine Hayhoe is a climate scientist who specializes in identifying sources of carbon emissions and solutions to human-caused climate change. And I'd just like to call your attention to her particular program. The easiest ways to fix climate change is population control and going vegan, right? Well, just a spoiler alert, those are not the only ways to fix climate change, and the elephant in the room, which I continue to keep pointing out, is fossil fuel burning. But there are a number of sources of global carbon emissions, and I'm going to dig into this a little bit deeper. I've frozen the screen on Katharine Hayhoe's graphic with regards to raising livestock. And according to Katharine Hayhoe, about 14.5% of global carbon emissions are associated with raising livestock. And I'd just like to add that choosing a vegetarian or vegan lifestyle is one way that you can work to help address climate change in your individual life. But I want to be very clear that even if you do that, you're not going to save the world from human-caused climate change. That there's a number of additional actions that need to be taken, and so what I want to do is talk a little bit about some of the harm that can come from focusing in on single issues that we might feel very passionate about, but that can tend to overwhelm the conversation and not take in the broader picture. So what I'm going to do is look at this EPA graph, and I know I've shown you this again earlier in another segment, but I want to talk about this again. So globally, 65% of carbon emissions come from fossil fuel burning and industrial processes, and that's in the form of carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuel burning are the elephant in the room. It's the primary driver of human-caused climate change, and it's the primary driver of heat-trapping gases in the Earth's atmosphere. So if you don't deal with fossil fuel burning, then you're not dealing with climate change. In addition, about 16% of the global carbon emission comes from methane, and a chunk of methane, a good chunk of methane, comes from processes that involve extracting fossil fuels such as coal mining and bringing gas up from the depths of the earth and piping it around to various places. You get large methane leaks. So in total, the fossil fuel footprint for human-caused climate change is about 70%. Now that's a big chunk, but the 30% coming from the other factors involved are also important. So we don't want to say that, say for example, land management, which is very important, protecting the forests, is not a factor. If we don't protect the forest, then we're going to be a bit behind the eight ball when it comes to climate change. Or if we don't address the issue of agricultural carbon emissions, which is globally representative of about 24%, agricultural, forestry, and other land use in the picture. But if you just focus on agriculture, or you just focus on forestry, and you ignore the fact that fossil fuel burning from internal combustion engines and industry and all these various factors are the primary driver of human-caused climate change, then you're really not helping, because you've got to look at the whole picture. And you can't ignore the elephant in the room, which is fossil fuel burning. So I'd just like to put a pin in this and say that say, for example, if you as an individual want to deal with human-caused climate change, then you want to look at your emissions from all sources, from the impact in what you eat, the impact in what kinds of energy that you consume, and in particular, the impact in what kinds of politicians that you vote for, because politicians support various policies that determine our trajectory as a civilization when it comes to carbon emissions. Politicians, for example, can support higher fuel efficiency standards, which reduce carbon emissions in vehicle transport, or they can support various policies to protect forests and various policies to encourage people to eat less meat or to use sustainable farming practices, or to reduce methane emissions in various ways, or to reduce nitrous oxide emissions, or to remove the use of carbon trapping gases in refrigeration equipment. So one of the more important things that you can do is be politically active. And because climate change is a systemic problem, it doesn't all just fall down to your actions as an individual. In large part, it falls to your participation as a part of a global and national political system, and as a concerned citizen, and as part of your group effort. So I know that every now and again you'll see a comment, well, why aren't you talking about agriculture, or why aren't you talking about forests? So when I talk about climate change and I talk about reducing carbon emissions, we're talking about reducing carbon emissions from all sources. But we don't want to lose a view of the elephant in the room. And that elephant is fossil fuel burning. Thank you for joining me, and I'll be chatting with you soon.